Welcome to 10,000 Things, the show where two sisters writing and publishing teaches you the 10,000 things you need to know to write, publish, and promote a book. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins,
And I'm Catherine Greenspan.
and tonight we are going to talk with you about the importance of editing and proofreading. Editing and proofreading. Friday night, we just celebrated with friends, family, and writers around the world our 5-year anniversary in business and 27 books that we've published, with 8 more coming soon. And so Catherine and I are really excited to share our expertise as usual because we've gained so much experience with all these books and authors. It's been a delight. So thank you everybody who showed up on Friday on our Zoom party to celebrate with us and talk about their experiences and the books. And it's just been wonderful. So thank you so much for your support over the years. So Catherine and I started this show because we love to teach what we know. And we have discovered that editing and proofreading are so crucial to creating a successful, excellent book. Catherine, do you want to talk about the importance of that?
Yeah, I mean, on a very basic level, editing and proofreading go hand in hand. And they are not to be, you can't discount the proofreading and the editing process. Several years ago, because the barrier to entry to becoming a published author is so low, Amazon actually cracked down because people were publishing books that had typos and just were not professional looking. And that reflected poorly on Amazon. So they started taking some books down. Elizabeth and I are both former English majors, so it's really critically important to us that when we read something, um, there are no typos, and the concept of zero typos is really hard to achieve, because the more you read something, the more you're not seeing the mistakes. If there's a typo or a two is actually your brain reads the word that should be there. So we've had books be printed and then only to discover something once it's I just discovered something in a book that has been out for almost 2 years, and I can't believe I never saw it before. There, yeah, yeah.
So remember, we also had a book last year that there were at least 6 people reading this book, and like the 7th person discovered this glaring error in a spelling of a name that was a famous name. And it was like we had all read it so many times, like 6 people, and then all of a sudden the 7th person is like, "Hey, did you see this?" So it's bizarre, but even books published by the big 5 New York publishers sometimes have typos in them too. I mean, it's a challenge. So that's why you have to be hyper vigilant and send it through multiple cycles of proofreading and have somebody other than your team or yourself read it, right, Catherine?
That's right. We actually, yeah, and also the other thing is not to rely on friends and family as your editor and your proofreader. They're great. They're very helpful, but you really, if your goal is to produce a professional looking book, then you want to definitely hire a proofreader and or editor.
Yes. So getting back to what you were saying about Amazon standards and such, several years ago, I was at a book fair and somebody gave me their book that they had self-published. And this was before things really opened up the way we do, our hybrid publishing company. And, writing a book takes so much time and energy, and then you're paying for it to be published, you're promoting it, you're spending time, energy, and money to promote it. And so the fact that this person had invested the energy in writing the book, publishing it, going to a book fair in another city, that's all kinds of money, and gave me this book. And when I opened it up and I saw their punctuation, like they had periods outside of the quote marks, which drives me nuts. It's wrong. And it's so distracting as somebody who likes immaculate punctuation, impeccable punctuation. I couldn't read it. It could have been the best book in the world. I just could not read. And they published it like that with the jacked up punctuation. And so to people who know better, it's like an intolerable thing. And so you definitely need, and even if you pay for an editor, a professional editor who's going to get your punctuation correct, let me just share with you some of the other things that an editor will do. They will make certain that you have removed redundancies, because a lot of times, again, like Catherine said, when you read your writing over and over, you become numb to the flaws. And another person who's
numb to the content. So you might tell a story in chapter 3 and you might accidentally tell it again in chapter 8, but you're so close to it and you
right,
know the story is supposed to be in the book, you don't realize that you've put the same exact paragraph twice in the book. That
right,
happens frequently.
right. Yes, it does. It does. So a professional editor, that will jump out at them like, uh-oh, you just repeated this. So if you have redundancies, if you have a lot of passive verbs. So here's an example. And as a book coach, I really hammer down on this because, like, if you ever read Stephen King's book on writing, awesome book. Awesome, awesome. Read it, read it. But he's totally like, use active verbs and don't use adjectives. That's an indication that you need a better verb. So my thing is, I freaking love verbs, okay? I get excited about verbs. And so think about all the possibilities with verbs. So if you say, he walked across the room, you could say something like, he strut across the room, he sauntered across the room, he slogged across the room, he dragged across the room, he crawled across the room, he limped across the room. Each of those awesome verbs conveys a whole different tone and mood, right? Those are great. But let's go back a step. Passive verbs are awful. They're terrible. Wherever you see, like, here's a passive verb. The light could be seen lit in the room.
What? That's just messed up on so many different levels.
The light could be seen. Okay. Super third grade writing, which is okay for third grader, could be seen, but, and that's
Who's the
okay for a,
subject? Who's
what?
the subject is the light, but who's actually seeing the light?
Right, right. So the better way to say that with fewer words, to pack a more powerful punch, is the light glowed in the room. The light lit up the room. The light sparkled in the room. The light, I don't know,
Illuminated the room.
illuminated. Thank you. That's an awesome verb. Do you see that? And it's so many fewer words. Okay, the light could be seen in the room. That's 8. The light illuminated the room. 5. So you remove 3 whole words. I have examples in my coaching class where I do all these really cool sentences and I show how you can like reduce the sentences by so many words and they just become these lean, mean, powerful sentences. It's
Well,
awesome.
and the whole point of that is it's exhausting to your reader to have to read all those extra words and twist and turn around passive voice. Just get to the punchline.
Right. Right. So speaking of, your editor is also going to notice whether you have a consistent tense. It's really easy to waver between past tense, present tense, future tense, but your reader doesn't want to be looking all over. Your reader wants to be in one tense. So you're either in present tense, it's either in past tense, and so you have to decide. so that you stay consistent. So your editor will recognize that. Same with voice. What, Catherine?
I was going to say the whole tense
Were you
thing.
about to say something about tense?
Yes, can you hear me? I was going to say, am I
Yes,
here? Okay. I was going to say that when you're writing and reading your own work, it's often difficult to catch mistakes intense or inconsistencies intense. Again,
yes,
because we're so close to it, which is why it's really critically important to hire somebody who is a professional who does this for a living.
absolutely. And along those same lines, voice. Are you speaking in first person? Are you speaking directly to the reader and saying, you need to know this or not, or strictly third person? So you need to be consistent with that. You can't jump back and forth between first person, second person, and I saw this
Third.
thing on Twitter yesterday where it was a man. I guess it was a clip from a movie that I don't know the name of, but it was a man running down all these crazy gold corridors like he was in a maze. And somebody had posted, when you write in too many flashbacks, or did you see that? It was
No,
hilarious because the
no.
guy's running through all these mazes and they're like gold mirrors. And so you don't want your reader to feel like they're in a maze trying to figure out where to go and it's mirrored and it's confusing, right? You want your reader. Reading takes work. And we live in a multimedia extravaganza world where all you have to do is sit and look at a screen and watch something. It'll have music, colors, dialogue, moving people, and streaming this and that. So if you're going to make me sit and read and do the work of these flat words on flat pages, you better make that stuff jump up and dance for me, or I'm going to go to YouTube and watch something. You know, it's true. It's true.
It is
Like, it
true.
takes work to read, and not only like the physical sitting there reading it, but the mental gymnastics of keeping track of all the characters and all the plot lines and themes and places.
Which
You
is
need to
why
make it
it's which is why it's so hard to edit your own work because you've got the whole thing in your head, but
right,
your reader doesn't.
right, right. So an editor can also help you with fact checking. So if you publish with a publisher, they have fact checkers who are going to be checking everything, like spellings of cities or a person's name, like a famous person's name, make sure, or some odd weapon or something. They're going to make sure that the spelling is correct or any historical references are accurate. They'll also flag anything in there that is someone else's content where you need a footnote or permission even. And so you really need somebody to look at your material in that regard as well. So for example, if you quote someone, you need to know the rules around whether you can use their quote or not. Um, let's see. Flabby writing. This is one of my favorite things. I call it literary liposuction because the first draft is going to have flab. It's going to have redundancies. It's going to have repetitive, long sentences that you need to chop. So, literary liposuction is when you go in and you extract the flab, you trim it so it's toned, it's strong, it's concise, it's tight. And it's fun. It's really fun because the first draft, which my son's third grade teacher would call it the sloppy copy, you just write your first draft and just get the idea down. Then the fun part comes when you get to go in and edit it and like mold it and rewrite it and find the perfect verb and sentence variation and word. Make sure you didn't use the same word over and over and over because that's boring. And so your editor can help you with that, but that's part of literary liposuction where you just make it super trim and fit and strong. Less is more.
And then most importantly, ask your editor for some references. Unfortunately, in I think it was in our first year, we hired an editor who really, she was a proofreader, and she really didn't help. She really, it was not a very good use of a couple $100. So get some references for your editor and
Yes,
proofreader.
absolutely. And when you get references from your editor, make certain that that individual has a reputation for getting the work done on time, because editing is a tedious task. And you want somebody who enjoys that and is timely and will get it done when you need it. Because I've heard stories about people giving their book to an editor and they just have taken forever and a day to get it back to you. So make sure it's someone who does that professionally, full time. It's not a side gig, because if their full time gig is overwhelming them, they're not going to get to the side gig. And so you really want somebody who's reliable and also affordable. So again, ask around and get referrals. That's a great point, pal.
And also get an agreement in writing. Obviously, when you're doing work with anyone, you want to do that so that the expectations are clear, so that if somebody hands you back your draft and says, I didn't find anything, yeah, so you have some recourse.
hmm Excellent. So proofreading and editing are really, really important. And the more you do at the early stages of the project, the better, because you you just want to do your best to discover any changes that need to be made early on, because making changes once the book is published can be either not an option if you have a major publisher, or very expensive and disruptive to the whole process. And if you have a paperback, hardcover, and ebook, all of which need corrections, the money is racking up. The time and energy and effort is racking up. And then while the revisions are in progress, the book might not be available for sale on the retail platforms, and it's just really disruptive. So you kind of have to weigh the pros and cons of whether it's worth it to make the correction based on the time, the money, and the disruption. And so, yeah, it's really important to make sure, but teamwork makes the dream work. So the more people you have working on these issues, the better.
Yeah, it's important to have a team
Mhm.
of people supporting you.
Yes, yes. And while we're on that topic, it's really important to have a team who gets it and understands what you're doing and isn't going to criticize or hate on you, or say, try and change your vision for your book. We've had some authors who people have told them they should write a different size book or include different content or write it differently. And they're like, nope, this is my book. And so it's
Right, your
your book.
editor is not supposed to tell you. Well, if you ask your editor for their opinion about your book, then you can get that kind of input. But yeah, so determine in your mind what role your editor, you want that person to play. If you want feedback on your book, then be willing to get feedback, honest feedback on your book, and maybe some suggestions for rewriting.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, that feedback. In fact, one of my coaching students right now, she got this wonderful critique done of her book, and it's really solid with really specific guidance on what she should do to edit it. And so you just need that professional that you trust. You trust their judgment, someone who's experienced and in sync with market trends, so that you can trust their authority on the topic when they give you guidance, so you can take action and make your book more marketable to publishers if that's what you're seeking. So we'd love to hear any questions. If you drop us a comment, we'd be so happy to answer any questions that you have, or even do a whole show on your topic if you have a question that you'd like us to explore. So, Catherine, is there anything else you'd like to say about proofreading and editing?
No, just do it. Make it a priority.
Yes.
Just look at it as part of becoming a published author.
Yes. Very, very good
Yeah.
point. Excellent. And that goes for your cover copy as well. You want to make sure that the words on your cover are perfect. You do not want one missing period or errant quote mark.
No,
You want it
definitely not.
to, you want it to be just right. So, all right then. Well, thank you for joining us for episode 21 of 10,000 Things, where we come on every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time to share what we know about writing, publishing, and promoting books. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins.
And I'm Catherine Greenspan.
And we are two sisters writing and publishing. Please do like, share, subscribe, comment, and click the notification bell so you'll know every time we go live or upload a new video. And meanwhile, we wish you happy reading and happy writing. We'll see you next time.